Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. As I say always, I am here with G. Scott Graham. Mr. Graham, thanks for coming on my podcast.
Hey, it is great to be here. We have a lot of topics to talk about.
I think we do. You know, the thing that jumped out at me about you is you are quite the eclectic mix of all sorts of interests and different things. And I kind of identify with you in a you know, we're not, I wouldn't say we're similar. Like I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to do a Tough Mudder, but like, you know, I remember I have a friend of mine who once asked me if I wanted to do a Spartan race, and I remember looking at him and being like, okay, so what about me that you know would make you think that I would ever want to do that? You know, it was like one of those things. But I identify with you because I got to imagine with all of these different areas that you are kind of an expert in, that you feel the same way I do in that society's boxes don't fit Scott Graham.
They do not.
Yeah,
they do not. It's been almost constant reinventing as I've gone forward with my life, where I've come up against one level of, boy, this isn't you, and then I hit another level that, boy, this isn't me. So I'm just like I'm like a stew. That's I'm a stew.
Well, yeah.
There's a friend of mine, a colleague named Cindy, and she says that I'm a placenta of knowledge, which I don't know how I feel about that, but she continues to refer to me as this placenta of knowledge.
I'd say there's worse things. I've been called worse things. So, you know, as an attorney, especially. Yeah. No, you know, it's interesting because the things that you do, I mean, you run a shelter for a nonprofit animal farm, right?
Yep, I do.
And you participate in Tough Mudders. You teach Tai Chi. You're a member of the gay community. You participate. You coach, particularly. Tell me how psychedelics fit into your coaching.
Well, one of the things that I've had to do is really break off different aspects of myself from the whole. So, like, I have a psychedelic coaching website, and nowhere on my regular coaching website do I mention psychedelics, except there is a section. I take that back. There's a section where, you know, it's about Scott, and I have a blog, and I have posts, and I have books that I've written. I just published my 19th book, and I'm almost done with my 20th book. And these last 3 books are all about psychedelics. And so those are out there, but I really want Google, for lack of a better word, to not get confused about who I am. So I'm also a Department of Transportation substance abuse specialist, which means that if somebody who drives a truck or a boat or flies a plane, you know, any of those things has a dirty urine, they have to meet with someone like me in order to drive again. And I'm like the judge, for lack of a better. I've got a background in therapy and counseling. I've been working in the substance abuse field since 1987. And so I fit this category that the Department of Transportation wants, so that I can be this gatekeeper to keep people safe. But I don't want that on my regular website. That would confuse Google, and it would confuse people. So I have like 5 or 6 different phone numbers, each with a different outgoing message
about what you do.
Fits into the little Scott persona that is out there.
Well, how do you see? This is something that I actually kind of struggle with. You strike me as very similar to me in that I have so many different interests. I'm a partner at a prestigious law firm. I do trial work for plaintiffs who have been injured. I'm also moonlight as a pro wrestler. I'm a dad of 4 kids. I do this podcast. How is it possible that you do all of these things and not lose your mind?
It is. I refer to it as plate spinning. Have you ever seen plate spinners?
Oh, right?
They get one one going, and they're like, oh my God. And then they run way over here and get the other one going. They're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I got determined. I have this support group, and we meet every Monday. It's kind of like a mastermind group. I don't pay for it. Nobody pays for it. We're all peers. We're all professionals, and we support each other to really go for our goals. And we're all over the place. We're not local. And some of these people I didn't even know till they came to this group. And so, because we're constantly looking to kind of grow the group, because some people are like, oh, I can't take it anymore. And then they get off the ride. So we need somebody else on the ride. Anyway, I've really struggled to write books. And I was lambasting myself 4 weeks ago. I was like, God, I really suck. I haven't written a book since November. And they're like, you're writing more books than most people. And I'm like, yeah, but still.
I was just gonna say, I was like, you're saying I have a hard time writing books. I'm like, you have 19 of them. I think you're doing okay writing the books. Yeah.
So I was focused on other stuff. I was achieving lots of other stuff with the rescue needed to be done. We had a volunteer weekend. All these other things got done, but I didn't get any books. And so now in the last couple weeks, I've been like fiendishly writing. I tried to, and I failed at trying to have some sort of routine. And I just can't do it. Like Stephen King supposedly writes an hour every morning or every day, and that's it. And so I thought, well, I'll do like an hour of this, then I'll go work on the rescue, then I'll do a little bit. It doesn't work. I have to like be totally all in. And so the only thing I've done the last couple of weeks is write books, paddleboard. I've done a little bit of hiking here on the rescue, because people can come and camp here in addition to the other stuff that I'm doing. But my focus has been writing, and now all those other plates are going.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can understand that. Well, tell me, how did you? When did you strike me? One of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you is you strike me as just a different breed of person, and I find that people who you also seem very self-aware. Did you at what point did you realize that you were kind of different than the normal 9 to 5 or go get a job type of person?
Yeah. Early on, I solo hiked the Appalachian Trail in 1987. And that was a time, I got to tell you, that was a time before cell phone. I mean, it was like the Wild West of hiking. And it wasn't lots of people. It wasn't, and that's when I knew. I did that, and I came up here and started working for Outward Bound. I'm up here being New England, and started working for Outward Bound. And I had like a silver mohawky type thing, and I was like, yeah, I'm different.
Yeah. And people, it's interesting, because what I find so interesting about this is there are so many people in there. Like I told you off air, I'm a member of the Mormon Church, and there's a lot of people that I think, because of communities and things like that, not just necessarily in the church, I don't even know why I said that, but just in general, they feel like they need to fit in like a certain box. They feel like they need to fit a certain mold. If you're this, if you're a Republican, here's all the things you think. If you're a Democrat, here's all the things you think. If you're a Mormon, here's all the things you think. If you're gay, here's all the things you're supposed to think. What is it?
I think that's only gotten worse with the advent of the internet and information. People just see things that they want to see and believe things they want to believe, and that's their view of the world. And anything that contradicts that is bad, evil, not for me, yuck, get it away.
Yeah. So what is your message to people when they come to you, maybe for coaching or whatever, or they're in one of your groups? What do you do to kind of dislodge that from them?
My style of coaching is very collaborative. So I don't hit people with a baseball bat. I just work with them. And so I try to plant seeds over time. Like I have had a coaching client who was very much like, people are lazy, people don't want to work, and I can't trust people to run my business. Well, there's only so much business growth you can do with that kind of mindset. And eventually he kind of got an awareness that, well, maybe because I gave him some assignments to do. I'm like, why don't you ask people you had a problem, and why don't you ask people what they would do for that problem and see what they come up with. And he was like, oh my God, why don't you see if they could do it?
Sure.
And he was like, oh my God. And that kind of like opened the window for him to be like, I guess it's not all people. It's it's most people that are lazy and don't want to work, but there are some. I just got to find those some. And then from there, it's gotten bigger and bigger, and he's become more successful. But his kind of attitude about people, his biases about people, were hog tying him. And so everybody comes to coaching with biases about other people. People come to coaching with biases about themselves. People think that, I'm a failure, or I'll never be successful, or this worked for that person, but if I do those exact same things, I'm not going to end up there.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. In your mind, as someone who's seen these things and has coached clients, how important is mindset to success?
It is hugely important.
Right.
The way that you look at the world reflects back at you what you're going to get. It's funny. I was talking about this mastermind group that I kind of belong with, and somebody sent out a little post, because I was really down on myself because I'm trying to get ready to do another Tough Mudder and some other stuff, and I'm not doing the sit-ups and push-ups and other things that I want to do. And they're like, you need to give yourself credit because you were out paddleboarding for 3 hours. And I'm like, yeah, but I got these other things to do. I failed in this area. And they're like, so they sent out a little quote from Mr. Rogers. And it was something like, oh, we have to kind of try and do our best. And sometimes our best is all we can do. And that's all we can try. And as long as we do that, we'll all be happy together. Amen. Like very Mr. Rogery, right? Right. And I'm like, oh, so I Googled David Goggins. Pulled up this quote. I'm like, here's a quote from David Goggins. There's this picture of David Goggins like this. And he's like, when you're exhausted, depleted, totally worn out, don't think you can take another step, then you've only used 40% of your potential.
Yeah, but that guy is God, he's a monster.
He is a monster. Yeah. Two different perspectives, right?
That guy is wired in some sort of crazy way to be able to do. I mean, it's a fascinating story. I've read Can't Hurt Me a couple times, and
it's one of my favorite stories,
isn't it? It's shocking what a human can do, but it's so true. I was just having this conversation with somebody about this, and I tried to explain, it was kind of one of these things where you don't understand. I don't have control over it. I don't. And I go, you do. Like, really, I just kind of said, I look at my life as I am the reason why everything happens to me. Like, I am at fault for all of my failures and all of my successes. So if my life doesn't look the way it's supposed to look, I'm the reason why it doesn't look that way. I either haven't pivoted the way I was supposed to, and look, it doesn't look the way I would necessarily want it to look all the time. You know what I mean? But that's my fault because I'm not pivoting when I'm supposed to. I'm not changing things that I'm supposed to change because the change is uncomfortable. But that's on me. It's not on anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had a teacher once way back early in my career, and he said, this was such a profound statement. He said, we are all products of our past, but only if we choose to be, are we a victim of our past.
God, I wish more people believed that. And there's nothing worse than someone who acts like a victim in a problem that they created. You know what I mean? Drives you nuts, you
Right. And
know?
they don't want to hear it from you. They don't
They
want
don't,
no matter what
there's
you say to them.
I
No.
actually was it was I had a situation here, and I was actually talking to somebody, who, we were talking about their perspective of themselves, and I just got so fascinated because they had a very delusional view of like, their work, and I just went like, "You really think that?" And I just was like, "Wow." And I just was like, "That's
It
just
sounds like that wasn't a question either. It was a
yeah,
statement. It was like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
you really think that, huh?
yeah," and it was kind of a situation where I was like, it's amazing to me that we can both be looking at this work product of yours and come out with two completely different conclusions and both really believe it. And I was like, and I remember walking away going, maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I don't know. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's one of those things where it's fascinating how people view themselves and how they navigate the world. It's really interesting how the way you were raised, the way how things were when you were a kid, and your life experiences really affect how you just view things. And
Oh
so,
yeah. Drives your actions all the way down, all
yeah.
those pieces.
No,
You know,
no,
I talk about this in one of the books. I give this example because I wrote a book that's somewhat critical of the gay community, and I talk about I was raised Catholic,
mm,
like really Catholic.
okay.
I went to Catholic grade school. I went to Catholic high school. I wore
Uh,
uniforms. I was an altar boy. Catholic, 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 Catholic. I mean, it
yeah,
wasn't like a sidebar gig. It was like
it was your life.
Catholic all the
Yeah.
time. And so when I came out of the closet and I was dealing with, am I gay? What should I do? All kinds of different avenues I could have chosen, right?
Mhm,
I could
mhm.
have gone to see a counselor. All kinds of different places. I could have gone to the Gay Alliance and talked to them. There were peer. What did I do? I went to see a priest. And and did I just like knock on the door to talk to the priest? No, no, no. I went to see a priest during confession
Oh,
to talk about this,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
those are the blinders on my eyes that said this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was
What
that.
what
That
what
didn't
year
turn out
what
too
year
good.
was
You
that?
have to get the book to hear what happened while
Sure.
I was in confession.
Right. Well, what year was that?
Oh man, I was like 17, so that was 1980. Man, I feel old.
Because
But
because
yeah,
coming because I gotta say, for people listening who are a little bit younger, coming out of the closet in the '80s was a very different experience than it is in 2024. You know
absolutely. We had my husband and I before he died were involved and had a bar that we
Mm,
had.
mm,
It was like a bar restaurant piece,
mm,
and at one point he decided that what we should have like a gay and lesbian night. And
mm.
so it's a marketing thing. And so he uh, organized the gay and lesbian night. All these younger gay people who didn't go through anything came out and they were like, we need to have gay and lesbian night every night. You're bigoted. You're homophobic. And he was like, he was beside himself. He's like, these people have no idea what it means to like be stalked or struggle because he was about the same age as me. And so we did we were like, fuck that. We canceled gay and lesbian night and we had firefighter and EMT night. And the firefighter and EMTs, they all came out, they drank, they got their discounts. Not a single firefighter or EMT said, you know what? Every night should be firefighter EMT.
Yeah, man.
I'm like, man, it's like appreciate your discount.
Yeah,
So
no kidding. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's sense of entitlement there?
oh
Was it
man.
because you were gay, they thought that you should be camping this every day,
Oh,
or
they
what
didn't
was
even
it?
know that. I mean, why are they? I mean, people know that we were gay, but they we did not promote that as part of it. We were just doing it was gay and lesbian night, and there was this piece of like, well, that's not enough.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's not enough. So, I'm also a firefighter and an EMT among all those other things that I do. So I was like,
you're just all
now
over.
We'll go from that community we'll go from that box to this box.
Yeah.
And they were much more grateful.
For a couple of minutes, here's the thing, because I talk to a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds, and some of my more conservative friends, religious friends, or even not even that, just straight friends. I don't think they understand the pressure and the stress of a gay person coming out of the closet and what that means in what is basically, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but kind of like a heterocentric world, like I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was a member of my church, and they were just talking about, I think it's very much not a common thing, at least anymore, where someone was like, well, how come if they want to be members of our church, how come they can't just, marry a woman? And I'm like, could you do that? If everybody in the world was gay and you were the only straight person, could you date a man, marry a man, have sex with a man, have a cuddle on a couch with a man? You know what I mean? Could you do all that? Like as you are right now, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, I know what you mean. I almost got married. And believe me, I am not attracted to women.
So kind of if you could put it into words for people who are not, who just aren't gay and don't understand, what is that like, having to come out of the closet and having to come to an acceptance that you are gay?
Well, if you feel like your whole world is going to collapse, and it's a little bit different today, I think, because there's a certain level of acceptance that is out there, but at the same time, there are some haters that are a lot more vigilant and ready to pounce on you than in my day. I mean, you just didn't know, and a lot of the interactions just made it really, really tough. I remember, and this was in the 80s, I remember being at a neighbor's house, and he told this joke. I remember this joke. It's really crazy. I remember this joke, and it was like, I ain't saying anything here. He was like, what do you call two gay men? Call a gay man on roller skates? And people were like, I don't know. And he said, Rolaids. And everybody was like, because this was right at the start of the AIDS pandemic and epidemic. And it was so crystal clear in my mind when I heard that joke. I was like, I'm not talking to you about anything in my life because I don't feel safe.
Right.
I don't feel safe.
Wow. Man. So, and it's so interesting being someone who, I graduated high school in 1999, and, I can tell you in my high school, there were a couple of gay people. You knew they were gay. There was not a single trans person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I'd ever met, or at least anybody that was claiming to be transgendered. That just wasn't a thing. Or, we didn't even have words like non-binary and stuff like that. And I have a daughter she's a theater kid, right? And there's a lot of different, theater kids are very eclectic, and there's a lot of LGBTQ community,
right,
especially here in California. And we've had them over to the house, and it's funny watching them, and because they're all such good kids and they're hilarious. But me is kind of like, I'm trying not to be a boomer, and I'm being like, all right, so wait, that one is not a boy or a girl. So what do I say? You use they, Dad. I'm like, okay, I use they. Right. I don't know if that's proper grammar, but I'll do it. You know what I mean? I'm just like, just sitting there trying to figure it out, and it seems to be moving so fast, and it's just. It's just so it's so interesting. Do you think
I could fit in? That's the piece, is that gay men and lesbians, for the most part, can fit in.
Yeah.
Right. A black person cannot change the color of their skin, their hair. They can't do that. I mean, they can't not be black, or a
Mm.
person cannot not be Hispanic. It's like you could be like, well, I know what your race is, you know. A
That's
woman,
actually
a
an
woman can't
interesting
fit
point.
in with the guys. I mean, today maybe, but I mean, back, you can't pass as a guy if you're a woman.
Yeah, right.
Um,
That's actually a good point in that you don't have to tell anybody that you're gay and you can fit in anywhere, right? You just keep it quiet. But when it comes to race or gender, it's just out there.
yeah.
You can tell. That's actually an interesting point.
You
But
know, all of this nonsense would be over if, like, overnight there was like some chemical in the water, and if you were a gay man or a lesbian, regardless of what you've done in your life, regardless of your age, who you were married with, whatever, if you just got, like, a rainbow bindi on your forehead, boom, here we are.
uh,
There would be a lot of people that would be in shock. Some people might be like putting makeup on their forehead. I don't know.
that's actually an interesting point because I mean, this is just me being a I guess a cis straight man, but it's like when I meet a person, I guess, and this is probably not the right way to do it, but I just, unless told otherwise, assume that they're heterosexual, right? Do you do the same, or do you keep an open mind on that, or is there,
I
how does that
I'm
work?
I keep an open mind on that because I'm totally aware of, when someone says, like, are you married? And if I said, are you widowed? And I'm like, no, I'm widowed. And then they say, what's your wife's name?
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm
Mhm.
like, Brian.
Yeah.
And then there's like this awkward piece of like, huh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because that, like, again, that's just things that I think people, you know, it's something you just don't even think about, right? It's just kind of part of the
Right.
customary vernacular and assumption that and that's something that probably needs to change, considering the way that the society is changing. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's fine the way it is, or?
It makes it tough on gay people when someone comes up and says, what's your wife's name, when you're gay and you've got a husband.
Mhm.
It makes it tough on somebody when you've got assumptions that are wrapped around you, and you go out and you feel uncomfortable holding somebody's hand, um,
Mhm.
because
But
of what somebody might say.
well,
you
what do
know
you, and do you also get, like, you paddleboard with your dogs that are named after characters from Guardians of the Galaxy, and you're doing Tough Mudders. Uh, do you find that people that you're doing that with are surprised because that's not something that you would associate, like the vision that you see in Hollywood and all these things of what a gay person is not
Yeah, it's
Tough
not a Tough
Mudders,
Mudder.
and yeah, it's not a Tough Mudder. Do
No,
you
I can't get any. I haven't found many other gay tough. I have a gay Tough Mudder group on Facebook
You're
that
like, and
I'm.
there's three of us.
It is.
That's hilarious. Oh man. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel, obviously a much different situation that I'm in than what you're in, but I sometimes kind of can feel a little bit of that, in that, like, just by my interests, it's not something that you would normally expect from a Mormon guy, right? And just I remember one time, it was a funny story. I remember one time I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, I went and saw Metallica, and it was awesome. And they're like, oh wow, how much were the tickets? And I was like, it's like $275, but I got to tell you, it was worth it. And then they go, hey, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is coming to town. Tickets are $75. And I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna, it's like, I think I catch them on TV. I'm okay, like, it's just one of those things. And it's interesting because I can't find a lot of members of my church that like pro wrestling and fight sports, and
Right. Right.
and we'll go, like, I went and saw with my son. Some people are gonna judge me for this, but I took my son to see the new movie, The Bike Riders, with Tom Hardy, that just came out.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic movie, but it's R-rated. I can't find many Mormons who will go to that movie with me. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of one of those things. And so, do you find that, does that make you I don't know, do you feel kind of out of place because of these
Oh
things?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
and you know, as a side piece, you know, Brian died in December of 2019, and
Mm,
so I'm kind of, for a period, I was kind of looking. Oh, you know,
mhm.
is there, you know, I'm interested. Is it, I don't necessarily want to be alone with, although as time goes on and I meet people, I'm thinking, you know, the dogs are just fine.
Yeah.
The
I
dogs are
I
just
gotta tell
fine.
you, yeah, I'm sure
Um,
dating, even in the gay community in 2024, is much different than
oh
it
my
was then.
God. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Although,
Everybody's
you
just
know, you know, there's this gay app. I don't get this. I really don't get this because, you know, here I am on this like gay, you know, app to like connect with someone, get laid, whatever. And you know, I have my picture is this. It's got a
mhm.
picture of me. I have a picture of me with the dogs, you know, paddle boarding, you know, all that stuff, you know, and then I see these like 22-year-olds that are posting, you know, their picture, and and all you see is they're shirtless, and all
Mm.
you see is this. Well, you don't see their crotch, but all you see is this. Like that's it. Like
Ah,
I'm like, it's a torso.
right.
Like
Oh man. Yeah.
why in this day and age would like a 22-year-old be like embarrassed about putting their picture up on a, you know,
Uh, I don't know. People are weird. I don't understand them. I don't understand people anymore. You know, I just like I said, everybody when I talk to them, I just go, it's amazing how you became who you are. You know what I mean? It's just, and sometimes
no,
that's a
you're right.
good thing, and sometimes it's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, I want to switch gears a little bit because one of the things that you talk about is kind of some of the bigger topics that you address is grief and loss, but then also work with psychedelics.
Hmm.
And how long have you been kind of interested in the connection there?
My interest in psychedelics, my interest in all of these things, which is, it's, I think it's an important piece, is driven by my own personal experience.
Mm,
So if I am right, I just published a book about MDMA and grief,
mm,
and the core of that book is my experience with MDMA and its impact on my grief over like a
mm.
6-month period, you know, chapter,
Interesting.
chapter, 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 all the way up to my decisions, from my decision to start to the day that I did it, to 3 days afterwards, to 6 months afterwards. So, and that's true for all the pieces that I've written. I'm
Mm,
writing a book on paddleboarding, teaching your dogs how to paddleboard, believe it or not.
mm, mm.
And same thing. I'm learning. I'm using myself as a guinea pig to be like, all right, this is the chapter of how to get your dog on the paddleboard. There's nothing out there. I'm figuring it out. And so it was about a year ago, and to be honest about this, and this, it's not that I'm depressed or suicidal.
Mm,
That's not what this piece is.
mhm,
But Brian and I were together. We were in a loving monogamous relationship for 31 years,
wow.
and we had made a commitment early on that we would, you know, we'd have each other's back and we'd be there. And
Mhm,
so, um, you know, he died in 2019, and my I am more cavalier about life than I was in 2018,
mm. Look,
2017.
can I stop you and ask you
Yeah.
about that real quick? Um, so was it sudden or was it something you were expecting after an illness is passing?
No, it was told, one of the things that I've done. Yeah, I'll tell you the story.
Mhm.
Strap in. Um, and so one of the things that I've done a lot of in my life has been a lot of meditation. 10
Mm,
days at a crack, Vipassana meditation.
wow.
And I always went around the holiday seasons, because if you're going to be silent and locked in a little dark room for 10 days in a row, I want to do it in the middle of winter,
Mm.
not in the middle of summer. So, and I want to do it right before the holidays. So I have to miss all the nonsense. And so it was a piece that I would do. And I would often, for this meditations place, which is all over the world, they really encourage people to do service there. And so, they say, yeah, you can donate money, but it's better off if you come and serve, help cook food, help do this, help do that. And so I was serving a Vipassana course, 10-day Vipassana course. And
what is that?
It's a form of meditation that was taught by the Buddha.
Okay.
And that has been passed down by, teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher. And this place is there's hundreds of these now around the world. They're Vipassana meditation centers. They have 10-day courses. They're taught on the same course everywhere you go. And it's 10 days, and you start off with focusing on your breath and then focusing on your body sensations on day 4. And it's really tough because you're not talking to folks. You're not eating dinner. It's tough. And there's no writing, there's no music, there's no reading, there's no nothing. It's just
wow. And you're doing this literally for days and days and days?
10 days in a row.
How many hours a day?
It's somewhere around like 6 a.m. till 9 p.m.
That is so all day. I mean, you're literally
it's all day.
Meditating and sleeping. Wow.
And less sleeping as the time goes on because you're meditating.
For 10 days?
Yeah.
That is a long time. What is the idea?
Course. They have 20-day courses.
What is the idea? Why so long?
Well, so the idea is that in order to learn this over a 10-day period is taught in a sequential way, skill by skill by skill by skill. So I'll give you like the first 3 days, you're learning a technique called Anapana, and which is just mindfulness of your breath. And so you literally are on your first day just trying to stay focused here. Like, see that little triangle? Like, around your nose, above your upper lip. And then on the second day, they ask you to get a little bit more specific. So you're just focused here. And the third day, you're focused a little bit here. So it's kind of like, it'd be like you learning a video game, and you start off with the macro skills and then build down to the micro skills. You get to the next level of the video game, and you have to have more skills to move up on it. And that's just the kind of concentrate your breath. And then what happens is that you learn this technique of just observing your sensations, which is, things coming up and, sensations on the body, which is a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort and a little bit of pleasure. And then you spend your efforts to just be aware of them and be equanimous with that.
When you say when you're paying attention to your body with a lot of pain, do you mean physical or emotional or both?
Could be physical or physical or emotional. And so what you want to do is come back to the sensations actually on your body. And so the framework of Anapana and Vipassana are these, your breath and your body, but that's really not what happens. What happens is that you sit down and you start to observe your breath, and you're just there to observe your breath and be focused on that. And then you're thinking about the laundry. You're thinking about what you need to do next week. And you're not focused on, all you had to do was focus on your goddamn breath. And you're focused on everything else but your breath. Or you're sitting there and you're like, we all get pain, and then I get a pain in my shoulder here, and that's just pain. But we make it worse when we're like, oh, this is the worst pain ever. Oh my God, when's this pain going to go away? Oh my God, is there any place that I can? Our mind makes things worse. We were talking about mindset earlier, and so what you start to discover, number one, is that we're all crazy. We're all absolutely crazy because we sit down and we're supposed to sit down and focus on our breath, and we can't even freaking do that because our mind is like, meh, 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 meh.
Is that the purpose? Is it trying to kind of center your mind? Is that why you want to do this? Or
Yes. So it is a centering of the mind piece. That's the first
Mhm.
3 days. And
Okay.
then after that is equanimity.
Mhm.
That's the real goal.
Mm.
That's the real goal. You know, the we live in a world where people are pitched happy, 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 happy. It's
Mm.
like that's it. You just do this, you get the right house, you get the right kids, you get the right this, the right religion, the right clothes, the right shoes, and you're going to be happy because that's the
Mm.
whole point of life. But that is not the point of life. Not
Mm.
at all. The point of life is equanimity. And
Mm.
equanimity is far more important than happiness
What does that What
because
does it mean?
so equanimity is kind of balance when the shit hits the fan
Mm.
and balance when the good stuff is
Mm.
going on too. So not just the bad stuff, because our minds are focused on two things. Push the bad stuff away. This happens to me, I don't like it. This person says this to me, I don't like it. Bad, bad, bad. And at the same time, we're focused on grab, 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 grab. You know, I'll be happy. You
Mhm.
know, once I've achieved this point in my career, I'll be happy. Once I'll
Mhm.
achieve this, I'll get it. Once I marry this person, once my son starts doing the things I want him to do, then I'll be happy. Once my wife does the things I want her to do, then I'll be happy. Grab, grab, grab,
Mhm.
grab, grab. And it's the push and the grab that is the problem. And
Mm.
so when you're sitting and meditating, you have this. I remember this so clearly. My first course, all this pain, and it was like excruciating. And then there was a few like glimmers. It was like I was coming up above the water, where I was like, "All right, fuck it. It is what it is."
Mm.
And and the pain level like went down.
Mm.
Um,
It
and
is
then
what it
like,
is.
yeah, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? Just and then the exact opposite happened. So that's illustrating the push away. And
Mhm.
then a couple of days later, I had this great sit. Like I felt like I was like, I don't know, on acid or something. I was like, great. It was like unbelievably spectacularly great. And
Mm.
then, like the truth of our lives, everything changes, right?
Mm.
The pain was gone and this great stuff was came. I came to the next sit. I sat down in the same space, in the same position, and I was all ready for it to continue. It was not there. And I
Mm.
was like, what am I doing wrong? I want that. I want that. I
Right.
mean, I'm creating all this misery from all this grasping just as much as I was creating misery by pushing.
Sure.
It's easier to deal with the pain and be like, all right, it is what it is.
Right.
It's harder to not chase.
So this
Create.
helped you kind of deal with some of the grief of your husband passing away.
Absolutely. In fact, the first book I've written 3 books on grief, and him and my story, and the MDMA book being the third book, that it just came out 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
But the first book was about Vipassana and meditation, and
Hmm.
so
So
he
you
actually died while I was on the meditation course. That's how we got onto we're talking about Vipassana. So I was on this course and I was serving, and they I cut my hand. I was cutting up romaine lettuce, and
Hmm.
you're supposed to pay attention. It's a Vipassana course. I wasn't paying attention. I sliced the tip of my finger off, and I came back, and the teacher was like, "All right, well, clearly you can't." I mean, I've done a shit ton of these courses. Like I've done,
Mhm.
20 of them, 30 of them. And
Uh,
so the teacher was like, all right, so you can't go back in the kitchen. So you can either go home or, why don't you just sit? There's 4 days left. Do your own little mini sit. And so, I talked to Brian on the phone. That was actually the last time I talked to him. And I'm like, I think I'm going to stay. And he's like, okay, I'll see you on Sunday when you get back. So we had, at that time, we both had T-Mobile, and T-Mobile had these little trackers in our car to let us
mhm.
know, go here, go there. And I left the place Sunday morning, and I knew something was. I called them. There was no answer at home, and something was amiss. And I pulled up the app on the phone, and I could see this like etch-a-sketch of like the car. It wasn't like it was like all over the place. What a mess. And so I stopped at a friend's house for breakfast, and then I called and to see where he was at. And these people finally called me back. They couldn't even tell me. They didn't even, they had a community Christmas party that he was at the night before, and they couldn't even tell me that he was dead. They were just like, they were crying on the phone. And I said, he's dead, isn't he? And they said, yeah, we think so. And so he apparently left the party and was confused, or he had too much to drink, but the car somehow got stuck. And then the car caught on fire, and
Oh, wow.
And then he died. And so the friend that I was having breakfast with was like, I'm going to come home with you. You shouldn't be alone, and I'm with you on this. And so we drove up, and we're driving up, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, right? Because I can't hear anything. Nobody could tell me what was happening. And I thought in my mind that he had, I don't know, the car had caught on fire, and then he had got out and then like frozen to death or something like that. Or there was an act. I didn't know it was. I actually did not know about the fire at that time, and so I knew there was an accident. I thought he got out and was frozen to death, and so I called and I talked to the investigating officer, and he was like, he's still at the scene. We're still waiting for the fire marshal to show up. And I said, well, what's the fire marshal coming? This was like hours later, right? And this is in Vermont, and so it takes. There's not many of us. So the fire marshal's like 3 or 4 hours away. So they're waiting for the fire marshal to go. And I'm like, I'm going to the scene. I need to see what was happening. And the friend that was with me was actively trying to dissuade me. Those people in your life, like, don't, it was all about her issues.
Yeah. She's like, I don't want to see this. Yeah.
He was like, don't go. You don't want to see it. It's gonna, I'm like, I'm going because, that's the relationship that we had. We were there for each other all the time through thick and thin. And, I had a little red fire truck, drove up to the scene, turned on my fire lights. I'm like, I played the fire department EMT card the whole way. And I got up to the scene, and the car was so badly burnt. There was nothing left of it. No tires, no paint. It was no windows. The windows were burnt out. That's how hot the car burnt. And I walked up on the scene, and they were still there, like at 11 o'clock in the morning. And I talked to the person, and he said, I don't think you should see this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm an EMT. I'm a firefighter. I've seen stuff like this before. He's like, yes, sure, but not when it's your own family. Partner.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like, no, I want to do this. I have to say, I'm so grateful to the Vermont State Police, because this would not happen, I don't think, it would not happen in LA.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised they were even considering it. Yeah.
You're out. You're not coming in. Right. They were like, this is still a crime scene. And I'm like, I know that you think that there was some bad things that happened here, but I need to, I can help you. I showed them the thing on my phone that said he drove everywhere, and they let me cross the yellow tape, and they're like, can you identify the body? He was outside the car. So he had gotten out. He couldn't open the driver's door while the car was on fire. And so he crawled out, still alive. And this was the piece that it still haunts me, but I would still do it again. Absolutely fucking do it again. he had to crawl out through the passenger door, and the passenger door was still open. And then it looked like he had started to go away, but then he had turned around. So he was actually facing on his stomach, the car, like he was trying to crawl toward the car. And I knew the second I saw him that it was him. I mean, we slept in the same bed for 31 years together.
Right.
And although I could only see the back of his neck, I was like, and I said to the trooper, I said, I have to touch him and say goodbye. He's like, you can't do that. It's a crime scene. And I said, I don't care. I just need to say goodbye. And they didn't stop me. And I knelt down in the snow and I put my right hand on his left shoulder and told him I loved him and said goodbye. And that was the last time I ever saw him. I would have never seen him if it wasn't for that.
Why did they expect what did they expect had happened?
So the car got stuck and the engine overheated and it caught on some leaves. There's some issue with Kia, apparently, with those makes and models of cars. But you know, I'm not loaded to follow through on a lawsuit with any of those things, and so I've let it go.
Okay.
But there was something wrong with the car, that the car caught on fire, and then of course he couldn't get out on the driver's side, and then he, burned alive. Wow,
man, I'm sorry to hear that. So, I mean, that to see that has got to. I mean, do you have nightmares? Do you have kind of like any PTSD response to seeing that?
I have trouble watching shows where people are burning.
Yeah.
Like that's like a trigger now for me. Like if I'm watching a TV show, a fire show, and there's somebody who's, in flames or this, I have to shut it off.
Yeah.
I have to any of those types of shows where you see, somebody was watching The Gray the other day with Liam Neeson. I was like, I'm not watching that. Let me put on. And so, I joke about it. I'm like, I need to see something with like my preferred shows these days are like, Lethal Weapon, The Boys, Beverly Hills Cop. I saw the new Beverly Hills Cop movie.
How is it? I haven't watched it yet.
Huh?
How is it? I haven't watched it. Is it good?
It's really good. It's really good.
I've heard nothing but good things.
Pleased having had Beverly Hills Cop be like a formative piece of my life. I'm an old guy. I remember that. And they did some really good, even to music. Like they had the same music playing at different scenes. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
I remember that. That's great.
Yeah. So now going back to this, so how has, you mentioned, first of all, let me actually get some foundation here on, you mentioned MDMA helping with grief and loss. What is the difference between, say, MDMA, ketamine, acid? You hear all these different kind of psychedelics that people have been using. What's the difference?
They all impact the body in different ways. And MDMA really is not a psychedelic. We think of it like a psychedelic. Okay. MDMA makes you very loving.
Okay.
And very, very happy.
Okay.
And very connected. And so one of the things that MDMA creates, and the reason that it's been effective with people that have PTSD, is that, excuse me, the reason it's been impactful for people who have PTSD is it like gives you, courage isn't the right word, but you can kind of think of it like courage, insulation to go toward those darker emotions. Okay. And so you take the MDMA, which is going to create this feeling of joy and happiness. Like you literally want to like go and hug other people. Like you just feel like, I love you, man. This is just, you're just emanating like gushy gushy goodness.
Okay.
But you're not hallucinating. You're
Mm,
not, you're still lucid. You just have this feeling of gushiness and love.
mm,
And so they use it, that can be used really great in couples therapy. You take
mm.
two people that aren't getting along and give them some MDMA and they hang out with each other and they're like,
Right.
I love you. It's like, it's, and so what happens in typical MDMA therapy, you are with a therapist, and that therapist prompts you and pushes you to talk about the evil, bad things that have happened to you,
Mm,
the trauma, and doesn't
mhm,
just go a little bit. And so what happens is that you can look at this traumatic stuff with a different lens than the pain, and then that shifts it. That has a shift of it,
mm,
and it allows you to look at the stuff that you haven't been able to look at because it's been too painful
mm.
to look at.
So if you're taking MDMA, and let's say we'll use your husband passing away as an example. Why is it that, like, having to look at that without the pain, what does that do for you? Does it somehow help you dislodge the grief?
It For me, it's so one of the things that I'm very clear about with folks is that grief is not a problem to be solved.
Okay.
So taking MDMA is not about fixing it. In fact,
Okay.
I'm on the whole don't fix grief bandwagon. Grief's
Hmm.
great.
Mm-hmm.
Grief. And in fact, I would tell you this, with all of the pain that I mean, you heard me as I was talking about Brian, that like pain that's still there.
Yeah.
If I had to do all of this over again and know that I would experience this amount of pain, I would still do it,
Mm-hmm.
because you only get this amount of pain when you have this amount of love.
Yeah. 100%.
It goes that
People.
way.
I
It's
tell people. I tell
it's your
people.
ticket of admission. You have to pay the price.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people, for whatever reason, I seem to be the lightning rod for every Mormon in Northern California that's either been divorced or has had some sort of faith crisis. And I've told them the same thing. I'm like, listen, the only reason it hurts so much is you had an opportunity to love the person so much. And in that way, it's strangely beautiful, right? It's strangely beautiful that you're hurting so much, because it just means you had the capacity to love somebody who hurt you, but you loved them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of
Absolutely. Because if you don't feel that pain, then you've had a life of a zombie.
right.
That's what you've had. Life of a
Right.
zombie. No
Yeah.
feelings, no connection, insulated from everybody, no risks, no trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
and no pain.
Yeah. Rather sad existence.
That's a
Really.
really pathetic existence.
Yeah.
So
So
if you're grieving, congratulations.
yeah, that's a good way to bring it up.
Congratulations.
Is MDMA the psychedelic that you have tended to work with the most?
Psychedelic that I've worked with the most has been psilocybin. And
Okay.
so the reason that I took MDMA is I knew I didn't need a therapist to push me to those dark places, or those places that I needed to kind of look at, because at 2 points in my life with Brian, we made these time capsules.
Hmm.
And I mean, big time, like 5-gallon Home Depot buckets filled to the brim with stuff.
Interesting.
Um, and
Excuse
and
me.
not the hardest part. And this is a standard time capsule thing. So if you have a chance to do a time capsule, after you hear this, you should really do it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that
Excuse me.
you do in a time capsule that's suggested is you and other people in your life write letters to the future.
Hmm.
So, and that includes letters to yourself. So I
Hmm.
knew in both time capsules, 2 time capsules, one from when we were together for 10 years and one from our 25th anniversary together, 2 different
Mhm.
points in time, we wrote letters. And that meant that I wrote a letter to him, I wrote a letter to me, and
Hmm.
he wrote a letter to himself, and he wrote a letter to me. So those
Hmm.
4 letters in each, so that's 8 letters in the total in the time capsule that I couldn't even I couldn't even fathom opening the time capsules. I would start falling apart.
Yeah.
I could not even fathom. And so what I decided to do was I found a trip sitter who's a paramedic. And I was like, I'm going to make sure I don't die in this piece.
Right.
Because I'm cavalier, but not suicidal. And
Right.
so I had a paramedic buddy come over, and I took this MDMA and had gotten the time capsules out. And I went through the time capsules. And what I told him I wanted to do was that while after taking the MDMA, having the good feelings, I was going to go through the time capsules, but what I really needed to find was the 8 letters. And I was going to read those 8 letters out loud, not to myself. That was my commitment. And I'd read other people's letters probably out loud. Boy, let me tell you, the combination, the MDMA gave me that. I'm going to say it again. It's not what it is, but don't think this is what it is. It gave me that courage. It insulated me from those feelings of fear, angst, and trauma that allowed me to open those letters. I am so grateful for that. The second piece is that while most people wrote letters that were just trivial and supercilious and just generic, right? Hey, hope you're doing well. Are you walking with a cane? Because we had planned to open this at our 50th anniversary. It wasn't an intervention for me when he died. And Brian wrote the letter with his letters with a level of seriousness that other people didn't. And my letters were much deeper to myself. Because what happens is that if you have the courage, you can pull out all the stops, because what do you care? You're not going to open that letter for 40 years.
Yeah, right.
So you can be like, are you still smoking cigarettes?
Yeah.
Stop. Are you still, not exercising? Get your ass in gear, you lazy shit. I mean,
Right.
If you have the courage, you put that stuff in a letter, because you're not talking about yourself now. You're reflecting backwards from the future. And the letters that I wrote really shook me to the core. I'm so grateful that I had the courage in 1988 and 14 to write those letters and put them in there. And I'm grateful for the MDMA to have given me the insulation to open up the time capsules and read those letters.
If you didn't have the MDMA, you just forced yourself to open those letters, what do you think would have happened? Would it have been a bad experience?
I couldn't. Like, I have people that were like, I'm with you. Like, we can do this together.
And you just couldn't.
And I was like, I can't. And it was like, I mean, I live in a 2-story house. They were there upstairs in the closet, both of them. And it was like, it was like something out of some Exorcist movie. I mean, like some deep creature in the closet calling to me. It was not a fun feeling. And literally, if I was having this conversation 8 months ago before the end, I would have been crying. Like, I would.
So wait a minute, you opened these time capsules in the last 8 months?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. So this is like brand new stuff.
Well, this is all brand new stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I did the MDMA like in January, February.
Wow.
So I struggled for 4 years about the time capsules.
Wow. So you in trying to deal with your grief and loss, it sounds like you graduated kind of up to using the psychedelics. Like, you tried the meditation, tried probably some other things through therapy, and then finally you're like, you know what, I'm going to do MDMA, and that was the one that kind of got you going.
Yeah, the biggest nut that was the biggest nut to crack, this piece about the time capsules in our past.
Wow.
And what we said to each other or thought to each other.
Yeah. Wow. What were you expecting the letters to say that made you so nervous?
Man, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I was so gripped by angst and
Yeah.
trepidation and sorrow that I was paralyzed.
And it's so funny. I wonder if you had this experience here, but I think when it comes to anxiety and things of that nature, what I find so interesting about it is that you spend so much time worrying about this worst case scenario that's going to happen in some event, or even maybe no event at all, just something that you think is going to happen. And like most of the time, it doesn't happen at all. And then if it does, it's not even that big of a deal. Like, I don't know how many times I've been really nervous about something. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do it. Right. I'm just going to do what I need to do. And, maybe I put off, I did some, I need to apologize for something I did, or I got to tell this, I got to do this thing and I'm really nervous about it, and then you go through it and you're like, why did I spend all that time worrying, about it? Did you kind of afterwards when you came out, were you like, man, I don't know why I waited so long to do that? That's
No,
been
they were
actually,
worse. They were
oh, they were,
worse than I thought.
oh, wow.
They were worse.
Worse how? Like worse, like you didn't know they were going to be so heartfelt?
Um, Brian smoked cigarettes.
Mm.
And so we were planning to open this at our 50th anniversary. So, I cracked this open, we'd only been together 31 years. So it was another 20 years to go. When we wrote them in 2013 was in 1998, like you could anticipate, would you still be here? So like Brian's letter to me was, you're probably reading this and I'm no longer alive. My letter to myself was from 2013, not the 1998 letter, was, you're probably reading this and Brian's not alive.
Wow.
How you doing? What's going on? Are you thinking about dating somebody else? Don't. I was like, right.
Wow.
It was probably the heaviest intervention that, it was for fuck all the advice I'd ever gotten from anybody else. This was me.
Yeah.
This was my 2013-year-old me saying, what's going on? Assuming that on our 50th anniversary, someone might be alive, would be this, my mom would be dead. My parents both are dead. They wrote a letter to both Brian and me. That was, it was just like a jack in a box of stuff, right? My parents are dead. My parents, my parents, no, when they wrote the letter, my parents knew they would be dead. My brother, who was the best man at our wedding, wrote a letter to Brian and me. They were like, like I said, a lot of them were superficial, but these ones that Brian wrote and the ones especially that I wrote were like, wow. Because you can probably see that I'm not a person to shy away from something.
Sure. Yeah, you don't strike me as somebody who would.
If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it.
But isn't it interesting? That's the thing that's so interesting about kind of this grief and anxiety is that, I find that really fascinating because I'm the same way. Like I am not afraid to do anything. There's not a goal I've ever had that I haven't hit. Right. And hit quicker than I thought. When you look at on paper of all the things that I've accomplished in my life, it's actually been, there have been many times where I've been like, I have lived a charmed life, and that I have been able to do a lot of amazing things, see and do a lot of cool things that most people don't do in a lifetime by the age of 43. But for some reason, when that anxiety or grief is involved, particularly when it comes to relationships and things of that nature, it can freeze anybody.
Oh yeah.
And it's really surprising how something like grief can really just stop somebody who normally cannot be stopped. You know what I mean? It's really
I do
interesting.
know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So it has stopped me in my tracks
Right.
numerous times. It still
Do you,
stops.
yeah. Do you think that right now, like the reason you haven't pursued another relationship is the grief still?
Yeah, the this is a really fuck it. This is a really it's everybody's gonna, I'm like being really public about this. So like one of the strange, difficult things for me it's been really, really difficult because Brian and I were in a monogamous relationship for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have sex with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't think I was going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about it anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't have sex with anybody else for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had made this, we made an agreement early in our relationship that we were going to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't care what it was. If somebody ended up, in jail, we were still going to stay together. If somebody ended up, couldn't have sex anymore because they lost their legs, we were still going to stay in this relationship. We were there 110%. And because of that commitment, we would talk about, we threw the parachutes away. Because we threw the parachutes away, we were 100% committed to not letting the plane crash. Because the plane can't crash. If the plane crashes and you don't have parachutes, that's not a good thing.
Right.
And so we just worked things out, whether it was sex or problems or finances. We worked it out. It's so important. Someone asked me once, do you think it's relationships about love? I'm like, no, that's bullshit. Relationships are about commitment. It's about commitment and sticking together no matter what. And because we did that, there were choices. As you go older, things stop working the way they're supposed to stop working. So we had choices like, all right, well, we have to figure out other ways to sexually connect with each other. Or have no connection. We're not going to cheat on each other. We're not going to open the relationship. We're not going to do any of that other shit. We're committed and monogamous. So we worked it out. The consequence of that is that I cannot orgasm without thinking of Brian.
Wow.
I mean, so it's like, it's even when I'm with somebody, it's just, it is not, it's just been impossible. I don't think it will ever happen.
Wow.
31 years of having that piece.
That makes it hard for you to have a connection with another person if you're thinking about
really difficult.
And you don't think that that's anything that you can that can be turned off or over time might lessen?
I have no idea. I'll let you know on my 29th book. You can read about how it'll be reading about how Scott got to come again without thinking of his husband.
I mean, there are worse problems to have.
There are worse problems to have.
You're so in love with somebody that you miss and care about, man. Well, so are those the types of things you mentioned?
I hope you're not blushing from this.
I'm not. You're not shocking. You're not shocked. There might be some listeners who are like, I can't believe we're talking about this. No, that's exactly right. I want the authentic, and you're not worrying me. You know, the thing that's so interesting, and this is what I want to point this out to people who might be listening about this, and that is that there might be somebody out there listening about this who are particularly they're probably particularly uncomfortable because we're talking about a homosexual orgasm. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I want to point that out. I hope someone's self-aware. I want to ask. There are also might point out there's probably people who are listening to this who wouldn't be comfortable with anybody talking about these orgasms, period, whether it was heterosexual or not. And I'm not talking to that person, but I'd like listeners to self-examine if that is the reason why they might be uncomfortable right now. And if it is, why? You know what I mean? Why is that in 2024 when this is not going away? This is being normalized. And you can have your opinion on whether that should or should not be. I think it's I think it's a good thing. Why that would be something that would be uncomfortable for you, you know? Do you notice that? Do you notice that, like, if you're in a group with a bunch of people who are heterosexual, and they're talking about their relationships, when you and Brian would talk about yours, that people would get uncomfortable about that?
Not not so not here in Vermont. I
Mm.
mean, Vermont's kind of a pretty hip.
Yeah, you're like the Bernie Sanders state out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Not in Bernie Sanders land.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
an interesting story. I don't think I've ever shared this before. So I can't remember what year it was. It was probably 1997 or 98. You remember the old Adam Sandler movie, Big Daddy?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you remember in that movie, he's got these two buddies who are gay. And I went to the theater to see this movie. And again, this is in the late 90s.
Hmm.
And there weren't a lot of gay kisses going on in movies at the time. And they all of a sudden go in for an open mouth tongue kiss. And the whole theater, right? Like they were all like, it was
Right.
right. So then fast forward, I go and I serve a mission for my church and all this stuff. And it was probably, I don't even remember what movie it was. It was like 2003, 2004, maybe 2005. And there was another gay open mouth kiss. And I remember, I'm gonna admit this. I was the only one who still went, you know what I mean? And I remember being so uncomfortable because nobody else did, right? It was just me. And I was like,
Did they all look at you?
nobody looked at me. It was dark, so I don't know. But I looked around and I went, okay, so like, and it made me self-examine. I was like, why does that bother? I remember thinking to myself at the time, I remember being like, you know what? How many thousands of heterosexual kisses have I seen on a movie? Why is this in particular bothering me? You know what I mean?
No, that's a really great way to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting to think about. You're like, why does that, maybe just because you just wasn't used to it, it's just something different. I don't know. It's just interesting, you know? And this isn't,
Yeah,
I've tried.
it's great that you have invited folks to take a look at that, because we were talking earlier about silos and communities and people being
Mhm.
separate.
Mhm.
One of the ways to bridge is to, when you have these pieces that are uncomfortable, to be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's that piece? I
Yeah.
remember the year that Brian died, in the spring and April, we went to New Orleans. We used to go to New Orleans a lot, and we're rural here, like
Mm.
rural
Mhm.
dirt road.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We just got, and not all my neighbors have high speed internet.
Oh,
Right?
whoa.
We're rural. We
Yeah.
are rural.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went to New Orleans, and I got these tickets on Groupon or Eventbrite or something like that to go listen to this band. And we thought the band was going to start at 10. And so we walked and we went to this place where the band was playing, and wasn't starting until like 1 o'clock in the morning. We were the only white couple, and everybody else was black in this entire place.
Uh-huh.
And I think straight, but I don't know. But it was pretty clear that we were the only white couple in this whole town that we had walked through in the daylight. Then we came, and everybody was out, and I was like, oh my, I'm like, man, I feel really uncomfortable. And we were
Yeah.
walking back, and I'm like, what is going on? Am I racist? What
Yeah.
is what am I afraid? Am I racist? Is it a black thing? Is it a city thing? Is it a night thing? What is something's going on, and my hair is standing up, and I'm not and I don't know what is it. Just that it's different, and having the courage to really ask those questions, um, uh, is important, because that's what separates the people that are connecting and building bridges and have awareness and are making changes from people who aren't.
Well, yeah, and I think that's always important to do. Is I view, I talk to people about this a lot. I have a lot of arguments within my own community about the way we should be looking at things. And I think the definition of closed-mindedness on either side is simply the idea that you have a preconceived notion of the way things are supposed to be, and you filter all of the information through that, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I was like, but I think open-mindedness is being willing to be open to the idea that maybe you don't have it all figured out. And maybe someone else has something, some new thing that can come around and possibly open your horizons to new ideas and new things that may actually be okay. And it's interesting on this issue in particular. One of the things I am not a huge Hillary Clinton fan, but I remember in a primary debate when she was running for president, she said something really interesting because she was getting hammered on the fact that when she ran in 2008 during the Prop 8 thing, that she was marriage between a man and a woman. She didn't want it, and then she later changed her tune. And she goes, when they were hammering on that, she goes, I don't think there's anyone on this podium who has not changed their views on a thing or two. And if you haven't, then you haven't grown, right? And I go, you know what? That's true. Like, if you still think the same, if you're still viewing things the same way as you did when you were 17, 18 years old, you have not grown much in the world, And so, well, I got to tell you, we're definitely going to have you back because there's so many more things I want to talk to you about, but I want to throw 3 questions out at you that I ask everybody. Okay.
Well, we should have told me these questions beforehand. So
no. That's the best part is that I like getting the authentic right on the gate questions. Okay. They're very deep. Okay. So the first
I knew
question,
I should have watched one of your other podcasts.
Well, here it is. What would you consider your biggest success in life?
Brian.
Yeah.
Sticking together for 31 years and not wanting to change my life.
Yeah.
Not at all. Nothing. I would change absolutely nothing about my life.
Wow.
I'm right where I should be.
That, I would say that is success. If you are exactly where you want to be, that is success. Can I ask you, I'm going to throw one question out at you. How, because I mean, look, gay marriage wasn't even allowed until 2012, right? I mean, nationally. So how rare is that in the gay community that a couple stays together for that long, given the lack of, I guess, marriage services for so long?
I have no idea.
Oh, really?
I have absolutely no idea. It's like a still.
I mean, it's becoming more rare in traditional, heterosexual marriages. It's becoming rarer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's a pretty remarkable thing that you were able to stay together.
I remember another Brian story, right? This is together for better or for worse. So it was when eventually we got civil union, and that was such a huge pain in the ass because we weren't recognized on the federal level. So we had to do our taxes like 4 times every year. Brian bitched about it like crazy because we had to because Vermont bases your taxes on your federal income tax. So we had to file an individual for me, an individual for Brian, and then a married filing jointly or separately, either one for Vermont, and then throw that away, but use those numbers for Vermont. And and I remember, I think it was like 2009, right? He came down. We would swap. I would do finances for a couple of years, and then he would do finances. And then, we try to divide that stuff up. He did all the plumbing. I still can't do plumbing. I really emotionally, I start crying when I have to do plumbing. And I did all the electricity and wiring and networking and stuff like that. It was easier that way. So anyway, he was taking care of the taxes, and he came up to me and he was like, "That's it, we're through." And I'm like, "What do you mean we're through?" He's like, "I'm not fucking doing these taxes like this anymore. We're just going to file one federal tax that we are filing jointly married. And I don't give a shit if it's illegal or legal. And if we go to jail, I am fed up with it. I'm not doing it anymore." And so I, like the dutiful husband, was like, okay, like we threw those parachutes away. We're gonna go to jail together. I don't know, or whatever. And so we started filing those. He just went on and did it. And then years later, the Supreme Court passed the law and said, okay, or changed the law and said, okay, you guys can file. And then all of these accountants were like, that means you can go back like 3 years back and redo your taxes. And I had this one accountant come up to me and was like, you want me to help you with your taxes? And I'm like,
we were already doing that. Yeah.
Like 10 years.
Oh, man. Well, okay, so here's the next question. What's your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Man. My biggest failure is that I'm too hard on myself.
God,
and that I experience success. See, I do the electricity. That's all I do. Pop on. I experience what other person would consider success, and for me, I'm on to the next. Like I just published a book last week, and I'm like, whatever. Like I got to get to 100 books. That's my goal.
Oh man.
And
I relate to you so much in that way. It's almost exhausting, but at the same time, you don't want to get rid of it because that's what makes you so successful at the things that you do. Right. I mean, for me, that's what it is for me, is that, my success is, it's just like, if I have a list of a bunch of things to do in the day, if I miss getting all that stuff done, I feel like a failure. But if I get it all done, I just feel like, okay, I did what I was supposed to do.
Yes, that's it. That is exactly it. Oh my God.
It's frustrating. But the thing is, though, is I think that is a common trait, healthy or not, of highly motivated and successful people. Is that you just are always chasing that feeling. You're so hard on yourself that it makes you work harder. It makes you do the things harder. It's why you've published 20 something books and you're like, I'm not good at writing books. You know what I mean? I have more awards for being a lawyer than I can count. And I'm like, when are they going to figure out that I'm actually not really that great at this? You know what I mean? Like, and it's probably a situation where everybody in the world can tell you how great you are, and you're like, well, but you don't know this.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That is exactly it.
I feel you, man. So, okay, last question. One day, hopefully far down the road, you're going to pass away, and there's going to be a funeral, and you're going to have a eulogy. What is the one thing you hope somebody says about you in your eulogy?
He had no regrets.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so far, no regrets?
No regrets.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is something, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because you seem to me, people who do all of the things, you're clearly authentic. If you're doing all of these things that you wouldn't traditionally expect of people, you're true to yourself. And I think that's what makes you not have those regrets. And I think that's awesome. So, well, we're gonna have you back because there's like 1,000 other things that we need to talk about. You've written 20 books, so we got to go through all of them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, yeah. So, well, for those of you who are listening, subscribe. And Scott, where can people find your work?
You can just Google G. Scott Graham author, or you can just go to gscottgraham.com. That's easy to follow. My name's right down there. So right there it is. There it is. Yep. Right there. Uh-huh. And just go to gscottgraham.com, and Google loves me. You'll see this podcast. You'll see all the other podcasts I've been on. You'll see the books. Yeah, that's the easy way to find me.
Awesome. Well, we will have you back for sure. It'll be a lot of fun. So I can't wait.
It's been great. It's been great. I can't believe I talked about some of the things that I talked about.
You know what? That tells me I did a good job. Anytime someone tells me, okay, I've never talked about this before, it's good because it means that you felt comfortable, and that's what I wanted.
And and you did that. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.